Happy New Year, everyone. It's fantastic to see your faces. Thank you for, hello. Thank you for hanging with us on this beautiful Tuesday. I'm just outside of Boston and it's sunny and cold, but it is sunny. Uh, and let's see, we're all on mute, or most of us are on mute just for the time being. So if this is your first community hour, please feel free to jump in on the chat, share a little bit about yourself, name, rank, all that good stuff. And then let us know if it's your first time. Actually, maybe just a show of hands too on video. How many of us it's our first time in the community hour? Awesome. Okay. Abby, Matt. Oh, double Matt. Great. Hey, Tom. Hey, Daryl. I'm just flipping through the pages. Hey, Nadia. Awesome. Awesome. So good to see everyone. Great. So we're going to give people just a few minutes. I know we're 2 minutes after the hour right now. We're going to give a few minutes for people to come in. Really excited about the chat that we have for today. Reminder, everyone's on mute, but go ahead and chat a little bit about yourself. If it's your first community hour, or maybe you're a community hour vet, you can add that in there too. As the community hour, as we move forward in discussions, feel free to float questions in the chat as well. Any ideas, advice, thoughts that you have, we're going to be reading that. I'm going to try to look into the chat and see if there are any really amazing questions, which obviously there will be, and I'll promote them up to our panelists today. Hey, Nicole. So a little bit about Humans of Customer Success. For those of us that are experiencing a community hour for the first time, this is a chance for us to get together. We learn from each other, we share our experiences, all about managing customer success teams, and also about those in the field, being a CSM, working through that experience as well. We have Erica, Celine, and JB leading our community hour today. Hi guys, if you want to wave. It's going to be a lively discussion. And let's see, if you have any thoughts on upcoming topics that we can have for community hours coming up, we typically meet every other month. You can go ahead and DM those to Jenna Kluger or myself. We like to get a sense of what's most interesting for you guys to talk about. Our next one will be on, I think, March, like the second Tuesday in March. So if you're interested, we'll have that information up soon. Awesome. So the community is supported by Quala.io. I'm one of Quala's co-founders, and Jonathan Tushman, if you want to wave again, is our CEO. Our mission is to make customer success visible and actionable across the entire organization, and we are privileged to be able to support community efforts. So we are 4 minutes after, and it looks like we have a good group here. Hey, Brooke, welcome. Let's go ahead and dive in with intros. Erica, Celine, JB, if you guys are ready. Erica, let's start with you as the VP of Customer Success at Privy. Can you take 90 seconds and share a little bit about yourself, about Privy, and about your team?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I just want to say thanks for inviting me here today. I've been part of the community for a little while now, and these discussions are always a ton of fun. So I'm excited for everyone to join us. So like Sansi said, my name is Erica Ayotte. I'm the VP of Customer Success at Privy. And if you're not familiar with Privy, Privy helps small merchants sell more online through text marketing, through email marketing, and through website conversion. I've been in SaaS and in software for about 17 years now. It sounds creepy to say that, but it's been a long time. and for the first 10 years or so of my career, I was a marketer. And that was really sort of my entree into the customer success realm when I started working for a software company that as a CSM. And I made that leap from marketing to CS. And so, thank you, Dan. But yeah, so over at Privy, I've been there, I've had my 3-year anniversary. And when I started, I was lucky number 13 on the team. And now we're a mighty team of about 60 overall. On my team, which is customer success, onboarding, and support, we have about 23 folks. So it's a good proportion of the company. So yeah, excited to be here. And yeah, thanks again. Excited to get into the conversation.
Thank you. And I realize I failed to mention our topic today is customer success at scale. Hello, everyone. And Erica is actually the one that mentioned this idea. I mean, I know CS at scale is not necessarily new, but this idea of running any customer success team, no matter the size and the type of customers you work with and the maturity of the organization, you can have CS at scale. I love the idea. I stole it. I latched on, and then here we are today. So thank you so much, Erica, for joining us. Let's move to Celine. You are the Director of Customer Success at Hubspot. Can you tell us a little bit about you, your role at HubSpot, and HubSpot in general for anyone that's not familiar?
Yeah, so hi everyone. So HubSpot is a CRM platform company. We have sales, service, and marketing software. We started off in the MarTech space and have really grown the CRM piece of it over the last few years. We're based in the Boston area. It's a public company. We're about 4,000 employees at this point, so definitely big. But once upon a time, we were a teeny tiny startup too. I have been at HubSpot coming up to 3 years. I was at Salesforce for 5 years before that. And I have a bit of an unusual background that I come from strategy. I was a strategy consultant and then came over to strategy in Salesforce and moved over to customer success when I moved to HubSpot. So have a slightly different background than most CS folks. And in terms of what I actually lead at HubSpot, it's, as you can imagine, the CS org is relatively large for a 4,000 person company. 2 of us co-lead the North America organization. My focus is I sort of straddle the one to few and one to many worlds, as we call them. So I own our small business team where our CSMs have a dedicated book of business of small biz customers. And then I also own our what we call one to many or scale team where as a team, we manage over 30,000 customers. So the ratio is more like 1 CSM to 1,200 customers. So that's definitely like the scale side of the house.
Yeah, that's quite the number that they're supporting. So looking forward to learning a little bit more about your experiences on this call. Great. JB, last but not least, you are the Chief Customer Officer at BombBomb. Please share a little bit about you and BombBomb and your work.
Yeah, hi professionals, great to be with you. Happy New Year. Just to give you a little context, I'm the Chief Customer Officer at BombBomb. We're a human-centered communication company. Specifically, what we're most known for is our asynchronous video tools. So sending videos in email or Salesforce or through your marketing tools like HubSpot, et cetera. So just to give you context from my perspective, I have been at BombBomb for 8 years. So started I was employee number 9, answering the support phones. And we are at about 150, 160 employees now. And we serve about 60,000 customers worldwide. So that'll be kind of, and I've had the privilege of being part of that journey, through that whole span of 8 years. The other kind of unique thing about our journey is that we are, for all intents and purposes, really bootstrapped, pretty friends and family funded, which offers kind of a unique perspective on scale, obviously, when you're resource constrained. So one of the things that I love about working with customer success professionals is that we are the group that understands there is no silver bullet. It is all about the hard work that we do. So hopefully our conversations today really just help us prioritize, think strategically, and take the next right step, because that is how we are going to win 2021.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. I think on that point, on this call, as our panelists share, we're going to hear a little bit of how they have done things, what's worked for them, what hasn't worked, maybe some potholes you can, avoid, and areas that they've been able to win. Of course, all of our expertise and feedback is also taken as a grain of salt too, because you likely are in your own unique situation. We're giving you helpful feedback and thoughts, but ultimately it's for you to decide what's best for you and your role at your company as you look to achieve this idea of CS at scale. So myself, my name is Sonciary. Many people call me Sansi. It's great to meet all of you today. I mentioned I'm the co-founder of a startup called Quala.io. We're based in Boston. We are a platform for customer success teams, and we make capturing customer usage and authentic sentiment from your customers that much easier, so you can build more impactful health scores. So we're going to dive in. Again, don't forget about the chat. Please go ahead. I have a list of like 20 questions, but you probably have some more important questions than I do. So chat those in. I'll make sure that we answer them. Let's first actually define CS at scale. So what does it mean to you when we talk about running customer success teams at scale? Erica, let's go ahead and throw it to you because you coined the term. I just, like I said, stole it. So let's go ahead and talk about what that means to you.
Yeah, sure. So for us, it's all about using intelligence and automation to identify and engage with customers who we consider best fits for a one-to-one engagement. So unlike it sounds like on Celine's team, where she's responsible for the one-to-many, at Privy, our product marketing team is actually responsible for the one-to-many product training. So for us, it's all about defining that one-to-one. And so, sometimes that takes into account how the size of the account, how much money are they spending with us? Sometimes, because we have to do this at scale, we're looking at things like, is the customer making an effort within the product first before we engage them? Because we have tens of thousands of customers, we have to be really judicious about how we spend our internal resources. So there's lots of different ways that we can define what a best fit customer is to us, but it's really all about identifying those folks, using automation to make that first contact. And then when those customers raise their hand and show and prove to us actually that they're going to be engaged, then we can sort of dive in and start to devote those one-to-one resources there.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah. And we're going to dive a little bit into segmentation and how you guys think about segmenting your customer base and how you match customer success managers and team members to those segments. But before we do that, Celine, JB, anything different from the definition or the way that Erica thinks about customer success that should be mentioned?
I mean, I think for us, it's definitely similar, like the idea of automation efficiency. I think when we look at it, CS at scale, it's about like efficiency and effectiveness. So how do you become more efficient whilst also potentially like augmenting your customer experience and giving your customers the options they want? We've really started floating this idea of like, there has to be a 360-degree view of a customer. A customer might not want to talk to a CSM, right? They might actually get more value from a webinar setting like this, or the community, or a knowledge-based article, and that this isn't the right time to have that one-on-one. And so how do you create those mechanisms to actually gain productivity for your own team, but also make that customer's experience more valuable to them and more personalized to them?
Yeah, I love the perspective from both these women. My thinking is very similar. When you're talking about scale, you're just talking about volume. So anything at scale is talking about volume, and you're looking at the systems and processes required to manage that volume. So anything at scale is about handling the volume, and that's where segmentation and your approach for those segments, I think, makes a really, really big deal. One thing that's interesting in customer success specific to scale is that, especially depending on what phase your company is in, I've found that early on in the process, sometimes the skill sets that equal great customer experience or great customer success or great customer relationship building are different than the skill sets that are going to build highly efficient systems and processes. And so it's interesting to think about those roles being different. So some of the things that you may do at scale are going to require a different operational skill set than some of the things that you do to manage accounts or to be a relationship manager for accounts.
JB, that really resonates with me, and I'm glad that both you and Celine picked up on or mentioned the customer experience piece, because one thing that I would say is that we didn't start there. We actually started with the customer experience piece, making sure that we were providing the most value. We were making customers successful first. And so once we had that motion down and understood what worked for our customers, what made that engagement really valuable, then we could scale. And so I just wanted to point that out, that that's not where we started. We started with customer experience and then scaled from there.
When you have customer experience sort of in your bones and you start there, how do you translate that relationship that's built as you're working closely with customers and that certain skill set that that group might have? How does that translate as the organization grows and begins to scale? JB, did you put, or Celine, Erica, did you put programs in place to help current talent scale, or did you actually allow them, let's keep them in the, one-to-one, working directly with customers, and then grow a new team that focuses on this operational efficiency?
Yeah, that's a great question. For us, it's very adaptive and evolutionary. I think we all have to be as we're building processes. So if you feel it is not binary. So you will, as you start to segment, I think you are going to kind of slip back and forth between, how you are segmenting and the approach. I mean, even now still, as we learn about customers, we're adjusting the segments and changing the verticals and changing the thresholds to move into these different segments. So some level of flexibility is I think is definitely required to do that well. But your question started off at an interesting point around customer experience, which is how do we take, many times when we start small, we have the luxury of being able to do everything personally. And then as your business is growing, it starts to slip away from you. You can't do that quite to the degree that you want. And I think it's very important for us in the customer success field, in tandem with customer experience and with product and with marketing, to realize that we have a huge responsibility as we build systems and processes to figure out how to continue to humanize our approach with the communication and the touch points, right? You've got great tools even represented here, even in Privy and Hubspot, right? You're going to use tools like this, or you already are using tools like this to grow your business. And every communication that comes out to our customers, our customer-facing communication, is training your customers to either ignore you or to listen to you and pay attention to you. So are you building trust or are you breaking it? And I think that's the challenge when we get to high volume, is we start to train people to ignore us or to distrust us, as opposed to training them to really engage with our company. So I think that's a really big challenge for us as we grow, Sunsi. And I'm curious what Erica and Celine would have to say about this, but you're going to have to start to look for some key moments to really humanize, I think, your approach as you have all of this volume going out, so that you can continue to maintain high level of customer experience as you scale up.
Yeah, I hear you. Celine, let's take it back just one step before maybe we think about answering that question, because I think it's a really good one, JB. But when you joined HubSpot, you talked about the process that you went through before you decided what to do. You took stock of the environment at HubSpot, took stock of the team, asked a lot of questions around time management, key initiatives, et cetera, and then sort of move forward with a go forward plan, which I think is a part of this customer experience discussion we're having. Can you talk just a little bit about what those, big initiatives were that helped you understand where to spend your time at HubSpot as you first joined the team?
Yes. So firstly, you have an amazing memory. I think you and I talked about this like months ago. I can't believe you still remember this. So when I first joined HubSpot, the HubSpot did not start with CS at scale. Like, they really focused on the one-to-one relationships. Like that was the first thing they did. And so when we created the one-to-many team before my time, it was created as a bit of a reactive, like knee-jerk reaction. We need to figure out scale, and it was a good effort to kind of get it off the ground, but there were some missing pieces. So when I first joined, the team felt really burnt out, and we didn't really know why. Like, they could all tell me they felt burnt out, but there was no data that really explained where that burnout was coming from. So we spent quite a lot of time analyzing just data. So like understanding what customers were emailing about. We're lucky in that we had a team-based model, so we had a shared inbox. It's a lot easier to do that when you have a shared inbox than when you have CSMs owning individual inboxes, but there are ways you can sort of finagle it. So we did a lot of research trying to understand, like, what are customers emailing us about? What's the biggest inflows? And then we also did a lot of time studies. There's nothing quite like a director coming in and asking CSMs to log their time spent on activities. Like that was a great way of building trust. But really trying to understand where they spent their time. And the team themselves weren't used to even thinking about this. Like, for example, we were onboarding, half the team was new, and they weren't, the more tenured CSMs didn't think they needed to put their mentoring time in the time study, when they were spending probably 5 or 6 hours a week just helping mentor new hires because there were so many new hires. So that was really a lot of where we started understanding, like, where are we least efficient? And before we sort of think about all the most amazing, like, personalization, proactive nudges, where are we least efficient and doing the most repetitive tasks? And also, where are customers emailing us repetitively for really simple things? We actually found that 40% of our incoming volume was related to billing and contracts. So CSMs weren't even spending time on strategy. They were spending time on, like, can I change my credit card number? Or I don't understand my bill, can you help me understand it? Like, really simple questions that really should be solved in-app or knowledge-based articles, like places where, frankly, the customer experience would be much better served. So that was really the first piece, is like diagnosis and building a data framework, so then we can put together proposals, get budget against it, influence all bigger stakeholders to reduce that repetitive task before we move to the more proactive, how do we build an amazing customer experience?
Any points to add there?
Yeah, I think both JB and Celine touched on this, but like trying to boil the ocean is probably not the best approach, and taking it piece by piece. So just a little background on the way that we did that in our journey at Privy is, we started from a CS perspective, just working with the highest value customers. When we had a team of 2 people and thousands of customers, we really had to focus our efforts there. And once we figured out what were the things that made customers successful, and we cued in on those, then what we could do is, then it just became a question of execution at those lower tiers. And I will pause here and say that the thing that made that all possible for us to be able to do was having an unbelievable support team, which were able to, take all of the, folks who were self-serve, or, if they needed technical support, the fact that we could rely on that team to be able to handle that enabled us to do, all the great work that we did in CS. And the other part of that was having great self-serve resources. So a really full KB, for example, that was, both descriptive and easy to digest. But having those 2 resources, I think, really undergirds all of the other pieces. So once we were able to take care of and understand what makes customers successful at those higher tiers, then we could say, hey, like, why don't we create a team that has, not an engagement in perpetuity, like, the typical CSM relationship where you're one-to-one and you have your meetings. But what if we created a team taking those same principles that we developed on sort of like the straight CSM side, and created a tier for customers who maybe are paying us a little bit less, but they get a limited time engagement during the most critical part of their customer journey, which is the onboarding phase. So I think, like, taking and understanding what makes customers successful and experimenting with one group, you can then take those learnings and figure out the execution part below that.
That's a really helpful thought. And I'm noticing in the chat, we're getting a fair amount of questions around how you and your teams in customer success partner with other teams to achieve some of the wins, document some of the processes and operationalize workflows. So let's first start with marketing and support, because it seems like a lot of the questions focus around your relationship with the marketing team and with the support teams. So as it pertains to communications, one-to-many communications, is the CS team actually creating that workflow, or do you partner with the marketing team to do that? And then we'll ask about the support side after. And I'll throw that out to anyone.
I can kick this off. So I guess, it's a bigger company at Hubspot, so we do have more resources, although it didn't start that way. It's definitely a team sport, right? CS at scale, like, if I had to say what's definitional about CS at scale, is you can't do it by yourselves. You have to work with a lot of other teams. In our case, I'd say our biggest partners, like we really own CS really owns the one-on-one engagement with customers. We really own the strategy, like to Erica's point, like what is that customer experience? Where do we think we add value as CSMs? But then it's a question of partnering with our enterprise systems teams, our product teams, our marketing teams to really develop the right automation in place, the right processes, the right technology, and also like the right messaging. My peer in customer marketing and I always say that like one of our role models in sort of tech touch is Starbucks, because they send 400 personalized version of the same email every day. And they've really segmented their customer base to really like develop that messaging effectively. And so that's a key partner, right? If you're going to be doing that, having that customer experience at scale, you've got to have messaging that goes with it. So, if it was just us working on CS at scale, I don't think we'd get very far. It really is a close partnership with like tech, systems, marketing. At the very least, I could probably think of 5 others, like sales as well, right? Sales has to know what's going on. And that's how we've, developing those relationships, developing the projects that are going to be highest impact for all the teams that makes them want to be involved, has been how we've seen success at scale.
Mm-hmm. And JB, I'll throw it to you next because you've been at BombBomb for what, just over 8, almost 9 years now. So you've seen the company go through an entire evolution. What did partnerships look like, in the beginning versus what do they look like now, and how did that play out?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think one of the things that's always encouraging to hear as you're talking about customer success strategy that I would just remind you of as you kick off 2021 is that your objective as a customer success leader is just to be age appropriate. So depending on how many customers you have and what your revenue is and how many employees you have, that's some gauge of where you should be from a process maturity standpoint from customer success. So don't look, if you're a 10-person company, don't look at a 50-person company and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're doing this. Of course you're not doing it. You don't have the resources, you don't have the positions to do that, you don't have the time, it's probably not your top priority. So when you talk about like what those relationships should look like and who should be sending the messages from a marketing standpoint, don't beat yourself up. Just look at where you're at from the maturity of the company and be like, am I at the right stage for this level of growth with the company, if that makes sense? Because the answer to like who's sending the emails and who owns the communications at BombBomb has been just marketing, just CS, some of both. Oops, a little too much here. Oops, we said, now we have too many communications going out, and JB hitting the send button out of his marketing software as well. So, and everything in between. Then, ultimately you'll reach a point where your marketing team is running the tools that you need at scale to be able to send communications, en masse to your customer base. And so they will own really the tooling of that and the metrics and the performance of that, but customer success should still be very involved in the messaging. So at our organization, we actually have a customer success writer who owns the voice of BombBomb to the customer, and that writer will regularly meet on a weekly basis with marketing and those of us who are doing, the folks on our team who are doing the customer marketing. And they get together and they agree on what this voice needs to look and sound like. But marketing is ultimately hitting the send button, on those things as well. You will, if you're working for a SaaS company, it's only a matter of time before your executive team or your board or your leadership or your peers realize that all the whole revenue engine is in customer success in a SaaS business, right? You might, if you're new, maybe sales is making more revenue than CS is recurring, but you will eventually get to a place where the numbers on the board will be bigger in the recurring revenue than they are on the new revenue as you scale a business. And so that should give you the horsepower that you need to build the relationships you do with the other members of the team. Like my marketing team cares about high performing content, and so they want to partner with us, right? And the whole business cares about, decreasing churn and recurring revenue. And so that gives us the seat at the table that we need to partner with our other business units like sales and marketing, et cetera. Also, the question on support, BombBomb considers support part of the customer success function. So that's just, my CSMs are going to be my proactive arm and support's going to be my reactive arm. But we're still, when I get together for, customer success leadership meetings, I've got leaders from support and CS and, CS ops all sitting in the same meeting talking about what are we hearing, what are the trends, what do volumes look like, what are the key initiatives, and we're all focused on the same kind of rock. So that's how we look at it.
Mm.
G, I just want to chime in and say that's exactly how we're structured as well. In terms of thinking about, CS and support, it's all the customer team for us. But I did want to pick up on something else that you said about scaling, because scaling is hard. It's the hardest thing to do in SaaS in general. There's so many business books written about this. So I think understanding where you are, I think, would you say age appropriate, which I thought was great, in the evolution of your company and figuring out like what role you should, play in that, I think is super important. So, and just to, give a sense of where Privy is with the responsibilities between communication of the CS and the marketing team. For us, it's shared. And, there are some things that, like more, general, like product marketing communications that our marketing team will share. If it is segment specific, we will often own that communication, regardless of what channel or software it comes out of. That could be on-site, it could be our marketing automation tools, it could be the inbox automation tools that we use, or just one-to-one email. So for us right now, it is shared. And I do love the idea of having that CS specific writers. Lots of folks in the chat picked up on that because, and we work very closely with our marketing team on those types of communications, because we have noticed that there's often a big difference between a marketing voice that is trying to convert a prospect and a voice that is trying to speak to a customer and their experience. And it seems like there might not be a lot of difference there to maybe the untrained eye or the uninitiated, but there's a huge difference between the customer voice and the prospect voice, which we found.
Good point. Good point. I have to share a learning that that was mentioned to me by the head of marketing at Alice. And it was that before you hit send on a message, think about, is this something that is for me or for this other person? And I think about that so often, about like, I have something that I want to say, right? But is this actually to the benefit of the person that I'm talking to, or is the outcome just beneficial to me? And I try to put my decisions through that filter to make sure that here at Quala, we have a give first mentality, that we're always looking to that give first and knowing that we are, that we're doing something that's good for them and not just for us. And hopefully if that happens, then in the end, it is good for us. Let's go back to knowledge base. That was a theme just a few moments ago that we were talking about. And on our last community hour, we talked a lot about knowledge base. It actually was one of the most important things that teams were saying that they were investing in 2021. Of course, that desire was to help them scale. So any methods, applications, this is a question from Whitney Harris. Thanks for putting this in the chat. By the way, if you have an answer to a question in the chat, you can go ahead, and I know we have lots of thoughts here in this group. You can comment on those as well if we don't necessarily get to every question. But can you talk about on the KB side, methods or applications that you just can't live without that have been transformational as you document questions and answers to support?
I can start off with that one.
Yeah.
So that, like, I think I had mentioned, like having a strong KB, it just really undergirds all of our operations, and not just, customer facing. It's a resource that all of us internally use heavily as well. So I also think there's an employee or an internal education piece there. But one thing I would say is hire someone who really knows what they're doing. From a KB perspective, we hired someone last year, and I wish I had done it sooner, to be honest with you, because having someone who has like the knowledge and the skill set specifically for KB, I think is really important. So knowing how to structure information on a page in a way that is teachable, I think is really important. Being able to pull out certain, notes or call out boxes about like, hey, this is like a sticky point here. So understanding both the technical piece and the customer perspective on it. And the last thing I'd say there too is making sure it's not just words on a page, but you have like a GIF or a video example that shows you like, this is the thing to click right here. I'm showing you how to do it, is really important as well. Because for some folks, they just learn differently. Maybe some folks like to read and that helps them understand, but having that, example, I think is really important as well.
Erica, I love that point. We also talk a lot about, so HubSpot has Service Hub. So one of our products is knowledge base, and we talk a lot about knowledge bases, but we talk a lot about, if you're thinking about scale, have all the right articles, like develop that experience, but don't block the human. So making sure that at the end, you still have a way for like your customer to get to support, an actual support rep if they haven't got their answer, is like something that we talk a lot about in terms of, yes, have the one-to-many methods there, but let them access a human if they still haven't gotten their answer. I would say to add to that, like on top of having a dedicated resource that can really help you structure the experience in knowledge base, crowdsourcing from your CS reps and support reps. Every quarter we do an analysis of all our support tickets to understand like what are the most common questions that we could solve in the knowledge base articles. And actually our support reps and CSMs can submit questions and their own little kind of blurb of how to explain it, or their own video. So that actually they're the ones who are helping us fill out extra parts of the knowledge base that we might not have had time for our writers to write up.
Yeah, I totally agree. The other thing is, there's some basic things you can look at in your knowledge base, obviously your volumes and, who's clicking on what articles. If you start to get repeat articles, that could be a good indication that your product team needs to be aware of it, or your engineer, depending on your age appropriate size of your company, right? So, if you get frequently asked questions could be something that, product might want to be aware of to see if they can solve those problems from their end, which I think is important. One of the interesting metrics that we're looking at this year regarding knowledge base, it's a simple one, but it's, what is the knowledge base visit to ticket ratio? So can we measure that we are providing quickly the answers that our customers want without needing to pick up the phone? And so we want to go move that metric this year. We want to find that folks can easily get to the answers that they need without needing to pick up the phone and talk to a support rep to get the help that they're looking for.
JB, I love how you mentioned KB metrics as a source of intelligence for the business. I think that is huge. We look at things like, if we had just had a product launch and there's an article or a collection of articles that are related to a new product feature, we'll actually use that as a marker of success. Our customers searching for information about that new feature or about that new launch. And so some of the data that we share every month around our KB are those rising and falling, not just articles, but also the search terms that customers and prospects will use within our KB. And that is also intelligence for our marketing team to be able to use in their, SEO or in SEM index.
Great thoughts. And I am really distracted by the chats and all these thoughts that are coming in too. So let's talk a little bit about metrics, because I feel like you mentioned one, JB, that maybe not all teams are tracking towards. I like that, a good one. I hadn't heard of that one before. Any other metrics that you feel like you began to employ when you started to focus on scale, or maybe they didn't really change? Anything that you'd like to submit to the group for them to think about tracking? Yeah, Celine.
So we are launching a big initiative this year called, we're calling it Tech Touch Team. So really like how you take a segment of our customers and apply no humans to them, only automation and personalization via email and other sort of one-to-many methods. One of the metrics we're using there is incident rate. So literally how many of those customers are still finding their way to us via different mechanisms. Like they might find us through a support escalation, for example, through the community. They might find us, like how many times do they manage to get through to the customer success side of the house? And really it's about reducing the need to escalate and to have them find their answer with us. That's why we're trying to measure that incident rate. So it's purely an efficiency metric. It's definitely coupled with like, is it impacting our retention of those customers, right? Like for us, the key is we need to increase efficiency without decreasing effectiveness. In fact, if you ask my leadership team, they'll be like, we want to increase efficiency and increase effectiveness. But yeah, so those are the kind of the key metrics we're looking at, is like incident rate on customer success and retention, like impact on retention.
Great.
Yeah,
That's helpful. Any other thoughts?
I saw we had some questions on that knowledge-based visit to ticket ratio. Whoever you're using to host your knowledge base could probably give you some intelligence on this. So we sat down, we use Zendesk. We sat down with our Zendesk CSM and they're like, here's the benchmark and here's where you're at and here's where I think you could be. So if you just need somewhere to start, even if you just start watching that metric, it could provide you with some intelligence. Is it moving up? Is it moving down? Do you know why it's moving up or down? So just start measuring and trend lining that so that you can take a look at that. There's several other things that you can look at. We were really proud of our ticket to close, our ratio, like how many touches to close. And we're like, oh my gosh, I mean, we're closing the bulk of our tickets. We're closing the first time. Look at this. It doesn't take 4 touches to get a solve. And our CSM at Zendesk is like, so if you're able to solve that in 1 touch, then it's possible that you're not either getting them to the answer quick enough, or you have something that from a product standpoint that you could fix. I'm like, dang it. I was so proud of that metric though. And they're like, that's actually not a great metric, believe it or not. So that's another one that I think is interesting. You can always look at time to resolution. These are all, kind of standard support metrics, that you might look at. CSAT and NPS, it's not necessarily whether or not you believe in those metrics or you have other metrics that you prefer. It's more about the comments that come, the verbatims that come as a result of that. Every week for the executive leadership team, I literally go and just copy and paste verbatims out of NPS, and I grab a selection of them and I put them in front of the executive leadership team every week and say, these are verbatims of what people are saying. So, looking at those kind of metrics, I think is helpful too.
Well, actually, to add to that, JB, the CSAT metric can be, we've started sort of debating, do we keep it, do we not? For us, it's become an element of, we can potentially address a really poor customer experience with a low CSAT. It's also actually become a really good coaching metric for our CSMs. So especially like in the first year of becoming a CSM, like I want to my team tends to be people who are younger in their career in CS. And so that instant feedback with CSAT is a really good way of like having them understand their impact on the customer of the conversations they're having. So, there's like that business side of metrics, but also like coaching and people management side.
Sorry, on that front, on the coaching side and also the verbatim side, and I think this might speak to Jack's question in the chat as well, is one of the things that we have found really effective to go along with those verbatims is actually using call recording software like a Gong to be able to pull out those snippets and really humanize some of the data that we're putting in front of, say, like our product team as well. So having both the data portion of it, and then I think, being able to get in front of teams who aren't typically customer facing, because I think sometimes we in CS can forget the power of hearing it directly from the customer's mouth, and being able to illustrate the data that they're seeing with an actual customer in their voice, and oftentimes you can see their face as well, lands like nothing else. So whenever we're having trouble getting something across, that 1-2 punch of here's the data, whether it's KB or CSAT or in product or health scoring or whatever it is, combined with that, just works out really, really well for us to be able to highlight.
Yeah, I think also on the subject of qualitative metrics or sentiment, voice of the customer, I think there's another channel of data that's important to measure, and we call that voice of the field or voice of the CSM, and that's to get a good read of how they perceive the customer is a technical fit. Are they truly ICP? Do you have a champion that believes in your mission and vision? There are some key assessment questions that you can ask your expert voice, the person that is spending 80% of their time on the phone with customers, to get a better understanding of what do the wins look like and how do we then be a bullhorn for those positive things that are happening with customers to the rest of the organization. Or of course, the other side of that is things that really need to be done from a product messaging CS perspective. How do we be a bullhorn for that across the organization? I love that we're getting questions around what do we do with all the insights that we're garnering? Because again, being on calls with customers or with customers for 80% of our work week or more, depending on with the stage of company that you might be in, it's like, great, I just had this great impactful call, or I go to the end of the week and I'm thinking I learned so much. How do I actually get all of those learnings across the ones that are important across the organization? And of course, using tools can be a part of that, the success there. So let's actually go back to a few questions that we had around things that you wish you would have done differently. I find that the community really likes to learn from failure as well. Of course, I do too. We want to sidestep some of those potholes. Anything that you did on your journey while you were scaling the team or building operationalized workflows and not sacrificing quality, anything that you did that you feel like, oh, I probably wouldn't do XYZ again, that you would like to pay forward to people on the call?
Sure, I can. There's a lot there. I have a whole list that I could go through, but I think the number one thing for me, and I think it might be very common to do, is to almost hyper focus too much on your highest paying customers and use that as the singular data point, which we did at first, for qualifying some of our customers for that one-to-one engagement. And now, we're using other factors as well. And I think, the reason why we did that at first is, of course, when you're young and growing and, you have just more anxiety around those larger accounts. But I think what we realized over time was that just wasn't the only indicator of what would make a good engagement. And we ended up, I think, in some cases, expending a lot of resources for not a lot of great incremental gain. So that would be the wisdom that I would share is not just about the account size, even though it may feel very anxiety producing to have it not be that. I think there are other things like that. It has to be a two-way street with the customer, right? Because at the end of the day, customer success can amplify, it can build a bridge, but at the end of the day, if you're working at a software company, they're buying software, right? And so there's only, I think the customer has to show some engagement in order for that relationship between the customer and CS to be as successful as it could be. So don't hyper focus on, account size, I guess would be my sum up.
Good.
Eric, I would definitely second that. We even in one-to-many, we would focus on like the higher end of the lower spend customers because they would just hit our numbers more if they churned. And in 2019, at the end of Q1, we missed our retention numbers, and it was a big, like, what is going on in our install base? And it's a really varied install base. And when we dug in, we discovered that our blind spot was our starter customers, which is our kind of bottom tier product, and it can be as cheap as $50 a month. So like really low spend customers, but very high volume. And they were just churning at such a fast rate that they were actually managing to impact our retention numbers because we had basically just accidentally ignored them for too long. And it actually restructured the entire way we managed our team and how we structured the team. And it was the birth of our Tech Touch movement in terms of like, okay, we have to think differently about these customers. Like we need to pay attention to them in a different way because they will drag us down if we keep going down this road. So yeah, I would say to add to that, the aspect I didn't appreciate enough at the beginning was educating my leadership team on what it means to scale. We sometimes have like sort of some customers will fall through the cracks because my team manages over 30,000 customers, and teaching leadership to be okay about that and to not focus on every single customer, because if we do, we can't be at scale, has taken a long time for them to be comfortable. Like, yes, we may lose this one customer, we may have missed the mark on that. Let's learn from it and scale that process, but let's not dwell on every single one, because we can't move forward with that mentality. So I think there's been a lot of like just sitting down with leadership, sort of hand-holding them, getting them comfortable with this idea that there might be small cracks that we will find and we will taper over, and build reporting to help with it and process to help with that.
This is good stuff. A couple thoughts from my end. The first is forge a healthy strategic partnership with your product leaders. Because when you think about scale, one of the best ways that you can influence the customer experience and customer success at scale is actually through the product. Even if you have brilliant communication campaigns and are getting 40% open rates, there's 60% of your customers that are not getting the message potentially. And so I think, starting early there to the degree that you can is really key. The customer journey, like if nobody owns that, if nobody owns comprehensively the customer journey at your company, then you own the customer journey comprehensively at your company. So go get a whiteboard and map out, and you're going to find out that engineering built a new account sign-up notification email that marketing wasn't aware of, and then customer success is inviting them to the webinar, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, we're sending like 20 emails in the first 2 weeks. And so really putting together kind of a comprehensive customer journey. If nobody at your company owns that, then you own it. If you literally are like, who owns that right now? And then the answer is you. And then the other thing I would encourage you with is don't get stuck as a CS leader feeling like you have to solve the problem. Your job is to communicate, and then you'll work collaboratively to solve the problem. So it's okay if you're seeing NPS or CSAT feedback or these weird trends that are emerging and you don't know what to do with them. Just communicate. Next time you're in the leadership meeting, say, all right, heads up, this is what I'm seeing. These are some trends. These are interesting themes. These are notes I'm hearing from my CSMs. These are some verbatims from customers. Just communicate, communicate, communicate. Don't carry the weight of having to have the problem solved before you take it to the leadership team, whoever your strategic internal partners are, or you run the risk of missing out on, first of all, siloing and discrediting the work that you're doing, and you miss the opportunity to build strategic partnerships across the business to solve customer problems at a higher level.
Great points. One of our values at my previous company, Promobox, and Chelsea, I think, is still here. We were both on the customer success team there. Was about asking for help, and I think that's hard for all of us to do. I think we take pride, and many of us, in being able to solve our own problems, but when it comes specifically to scaling teams and winning with the customer, that is a all team effort, and it's all consuming. If I might share, I think the thing that I did at Promobox that I would do differently at Quala was that when we talked about wanting to scale the team and work more one-to-many with our customers, to talk open and honestly about what we would be gaining and potentially what we would be losing as a result, and how that might affect the company overall. Because as you shift, or if you segment your customers, as you shift to CS at scale, it is a mentality shift as well. You can't have the sort of like white glove named accounts, full service experience as you scale, because you're looking for inefficiencies. It's a completely different mindset. So it would really be, if you're going to choose a path with certain customer segments or across an entire segment, then choose it very carefully and purposefully, and make sure that the entire leadership team is also aligned on why you're doing that and what you're going to gain from it. That's my experience. Let's ask one more final question. I know we have about 5 minutes, so we'll try to wrap it up. Specifically, we're at the beginning of 2021. We've gone through many goal setting exercises. We've talked a little bit about metrics already, but any mantras, vision, mission that you've put together for the team for this year, as you think about, scaling across 2021 and bettering your efforts, anything that you'd like to share to the rest of the group here that you think could be inspiring, or maybe just knowledge transfer?
Yeah, one thing that I'll share that's sort of our team's watchword or mantra going into 2021 is really thinking about what we're doing in terms of both combining CS and customer experience as well, meaning customer experience, meaning like tech touch. So it's really going forward for us, a combination of those things. So thinking really critically about, how do we use data points? How do we use automation to better discover and engage these folks? So really, in my mind, it's really exciting because it's sort of like combining those two worlds in one org over on my team. So yeah, just really excited about that.
Nice. I like that. Anything to offer, JB or Celine, that you feel like would be good to share with the group?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd go back to kind of what we opened up with, which is just to encourage all of us, I'm speaking this for myself, in addition to you all, is that our job is just to take the next right step, and there's not a silver bullet. So it's okay that this is hard. We're better at doing hard work in these SaaS companies than just about anybody else out there. And so, if you're not sure where to start, it's probably somewhere in the onboarding of your customers. Usually that's where we're making the greatest impact, is right up front. Are they getting to health quickly? Do you have a way to measure health? These are all, brilliant places to start. Or maybe you've had a process in place for the last couple of years and it's time to go back and figure out what you've learned from it and revisit it and revamp it. But you need to get to health quickly right out of the gate. And so if you're not sure where to start, or if you're new or you're a smaller company, it's probably somewhere in the onboarding at scale. And it needs to be more than an email campaign. It's got to be baked into the product. It needs to be baked into the customer experience. And so, I think that's probably where I would focus. What's the next step? What's the right prioritization of the business? I like the concept too. One of the things, from our seat that we're going to be working on a lot is expansion from existing customers this year. And that's kind of an interesting conversation, because who owns expansion? And if you guys want to have another session and debate that at some point, that's always a hot topic. I've had the privilege of running sales at 3 different points during my career at BombBomb. And I believe that I love customer success kinds of sales, because we're pretty good at identifying and adding value to customers. And when you earn the right to expand the relationship because you've done it the right way, it's a great feeling, and it's a kind of revenue that retains really, really well. So, you might start to get curious about how do you add value and earn the right to ask for the opportunity to expand your business within your product. If you can strategically engineer expansion into your product, your business metrics are going to be nuts. So maybe thinking strategically about that, that's an area that we're going to be spending some time this year.
Awesome. Celine, why don't you close us out?
I'm not sure I can really top that ending from JB. But so I will say the scale topic it's very timely. Our 2021 theme for customer success at HubSpot is success at scale. So it really is about, even at our level of organization, there are so many different ways we don't scale effectively. So, I think whatever size you are, looking at that customer experience holistically, understanding where are the opportunities to drive, strategic customer conversations for adoption and growth, and where are the points of friction, either internal handoff friction, product friction, repetitive questions coming in, whatever it might be, like find those areas of opportunity and those areas of friction and like tackle them one by one. Like what's the highest impact and the lowest effort you can find those ones first and then sort of go in decreasing order. I think that's how you'll really achieve scale and impact with your organization.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Erica, JB, Celine, for joining us. It was good to see your faces, and we'll see you again in March. Bye, everyone.
Well, guess we better get to work.
Great job, guys. Super, super good. Loved it.
Thanks, JB. Thanks, everyone. Take care.